My daughter-in-law dropped off my 5-year-old granddaughter at my house for one night. The next morning, my granddaughter whispered to me, "Grandma, Mommy said I can't tell you what I saw at home." I asked her, "Sweetheart, what was it that you saw?" Her answer made me call the police immediately. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge. I want to know how far it has traveled. I still clearly remember that evening, when the yellowish glow of the streetlights fell on the porch and cast trembling shadows from the bare trees, which seemed to mirror my own heart at that moment. I lived in a small house on the outskirts of Phoenix, where every corner was soaked in memories of days gone by. That night, my daughter-in-law, Jenna, brought my granddaughter Lily over. She said she had to work the night shift, an excuse I had heard countless times before. But this time, something was different, like a draft of cold air seeping through a crack in the door that made me shiver. Jenna stood on the threshold, hesitating to come inside as she usually did. Her hands were clutching the handles of her purse, her knuckles so tight they were white. Her eyes darted nervously down the street, as if searching for some invisible silhouette in the darkness. "You don't mind, do you?" she asked me, her voice trembling, repeating the same question for the third time, even though I had already nodded and smiled to reassure her. I looked into her eyes, trying to find a trace of the sweet daughter-in-law she once was, but I only found a tension I couldn't explain. Next to Jenna, Lily, my little granddaughter, hid against her mother, tightly hugging her teddy bear named Milo. That bear was already worn and faded, like the years that had watched Lily grow up amidst sorrow. Her school clothes were a little wrinkled. She had probably been wearing them all day. Her big, round eyes looked at me with a mix of shyness and pleading, as if asking for a safe haven. My heart ached. How long had it been since I was last able to hug my granddaughter and hear her laugh like in the old days? As Jenna was about to leave, she leaned down to Lily and whispered, low enough but just loud enough for me to hear, "Sleep well, my love. I'll come for you tomorrow." Then she looked up, and her eyes met mine in a fleeting glance. In that instant, I felt something. Was it a warning or a plea? I wasn't sure, but that look left my chest feeling heavy. Jenna turned quickly, and her slender figure soon disappeared into the darkness, leaving me alone with Lily on the porch. I took Lily's hand and led her inside. My small kitchen was filled with the aroma of the chicken noodle soup I had prepared since the afternoon to welcome her. I placed the bowl in front of Lily and smiled. "Eat a little, honey. I made it for you." But she barely moved her spoon, her eyes lost in the bowl. "I'm not hungry, Grandma," she murmured in a tiny voice, as if she were afraid of bothering me. I tried to keep smiling, but inside, I was hurting. My Lily, the girl who used to chat excitedly about school, now seemed like a silent shadow. All evening, Lily snuggled on the sofa, hugging Milo tightly, her gaze fixed on the screen where brightly colored cartoons were playing. But I knew she wasn't really watching them. Her eyes were empty, as if lost in a world I couldn't enter. I sat beside her, wanting to ask her questions, to get closer to her. But every time I tried to speak, I saw that distance in her eyes, and I fell silent. Maybe, I thought, all she needed was time to feel safe. That night, I made her bed next to mine in the small bedroom where I still keep the old bed of my son, Michael. Lily lay down quietly, hugging Milo, with her back to the wall. In the silence, I could clearly hear her sighs, heavy, like those of an adult tired of life. Those sighs reminded me of my own sleepless nights after Michael's passing, when I could only hear the painful beats of my own heart. I wanted to hug Lily, to tell her that I would always be there, but I was afraid of scaring her. So I stayed still, listening and praying for her to have a peaceful sleep. But my own sleep was restless. Around midnight, I was startled awake by Lily's sobs. The little girl was dreaming, her voice broken and trembling. "Grandma, I'm so scared, don't leave me." I hurried to sit up, placing my hand on her shoulder. But Lily was still asleep, her brow furrowed and her lips tight, as if trying to hold back her fear. I gently stroked her hair and whispered, "I'm right here, my love. I'm not going anywhere." But inside me, a vague worry began to grow, like a cold wind slipping through my fingers. The next morning, the dawn light filtered through the crack in the window, painting warm, golden rays on the floor. I got up early, went quietly into the kitchen, and tried to create a familiar atmosphere to dispel the heaviness of the previous night. The eggs sizzled in the pan, the smell of toast and warm milk spreading throughout the small kitchen. I wanted Lily to wake up and feel that warmth, just as she used to with Michael every morning when my son was little. But deep down, I knew that nothing was the same anymore. Lily came out of the room, her hair tangled, her eyes swollen and red as if she had been crying a lot. She was still hugging her bear, Milo, tightly, as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. I tried to smile, speaking in a soft voice. "Honey, did you sleep well last night?" Lily looked down, her lips pressed together, not answering right away. I continued flipping the eggs in the pan, trying to make my voice sound light. "I made you scrambled eggs and warm milk. Do you want to sit and have breakfast with me?" The little girl hesitated, then sat down at the table, but without letting go of the teddy bear. I put the plate in front of her, silently wishing she would eat a little, if only to reassure me. But then, Lily murmured, in a voice as soft as a breath, just loud enough for my entire world to stop. "Grandma, Mommy told me not to tell you what I saw at the house." My hand froze in midair, the spatula about to fall. I turned slowly, placed the spatula on the counter, and tried to keep my voice from trembling. "Honey, don't be afraid. What was it that you saw?" I knelt in front of Lily, looking into her clear eyes, which were now filled with tears. She bit her lip, as if fighting between fear and the need to speak. And then, with a trembling voice, each word tore my heart apart. "There's a little girl, locked in the basement of the house, Grandma. She never stops crying. She says her hands hurt a lot." I knows. Clang. The metal spoon fell from my hand onto the tile floor. The sharp sound echoed in the silence. The glass of milk on the table wobbled, spilling a white stream. I was paralyzed, unable to believe what I had just heard. Lily's terrified eyes looked at me, as if asking for help, as if she had just released a secret too big to carry any longer. I wanted to say something, to ask more, but my throat closed up, as if someone were squeezing it tightly. Lily burst into tears and threw herself into my arms, burying her face in my shoulder. Her small body trembled uncontrollably, like a little bird caught in a storm. I hugged her tightly, feeling each of her agitated breaths, but in my mind, 1,000 questions were screaming. A girl locked up? In Jenna's house? How could that be possible? I wanted to believe Lily had just imagined it, that it was a child's nightmare, but her eyes, the fear so clear on her little face, told me this was no fairy tale. I gently stroked her tangled hair, trying to calm her, but my mind had already traveled back to days past, when the memory of my small family was still intact, as bright as the Arizona Sunday. Years ago, this house wasn't as quiet as it is now. It was full of laughter, of voices, and of those familiar aromas that came from the kitchen. I perfectly remember those weekend afternoons when Michael, my son, would come home with a smile as radiant as the Sunday. My son, a tall and strong engineer, always radiated that warm energy, as if he could dispel any shadow. "Mom, today I made the whole crew burst out laughing on the construction site." He would usually begin his stories, while taking off his dusty boots and lifting Lily onto his shoulders. Lily, so tiny then, just learning to walk, would laugh out loud when her father tossed her into the air, her little hands waving as if she wanted to touch the sky. Jenna, my daughter-in-law, was a sweet girl back then, with a smile that shone like a sunflower. She and I used to spend hours in the kitchen, preparing traditional dishes together. Green chili stew was a favorite of ours. I taught her how to roast the chilies, how to toast the cumin until it released its aroma, and we would chat animatedly while we cooked. "Mom, do you think Michael will like this dish?" she used to ask, her eyes shining with joy. I would smile, joking. "If Michael doesn't enjoy what we've made, I'll scold him myself." Those moments, so simple and warm, were like precious jewels in my memory, treasures I thought would last forever. Family dinners were the time I cherished most. Michael would sit at the head of the table, telling funny anecdotes from the construction site, from someone dropping a bucket of concrete mix to the times the whole crew sang at the top of their lungs during their break. Lily, a little girl sitting on his lap, would listen attentively with her huge eyes, sometimes interrupting with innocent questions. "Daddy, is that truck as big as our house?" I would just sit there, watching my little family, my heart full of peace. There were moments when I told myself that I was a fortunate woman, with a complete family, even though life was never simple. But everything shattered on a rainy night marked by fate. I still remember that early morning when the phone rang insistently, tearing me from my sleep. The voice on the other end was trembling as it gave me the news that Michael had been in an accident. His car lost control on a slippery road and went over a ravine in the dark. I stood motionless, clutching the receiver, feeling my whole world crumbling beneath my feet. "No, it can't be," I murmured. But the cruel truth would never change. Michael, my son, the light of my life, was gone forever, leaving a void impossible to fill. Michael's funeral was held on a gray day, with a drizzle that fell like tears from the sky. I held Lily, who was just 2 years old, against my chest. The confused little girl didn't yet understand that her father was gone forever. "Where's Daddy, Grandma?" Lily asked, in a voice so clear it made me want to break down and cry. I hugged her tighter and whispered, "Daddy is in a very faraway place, but he's always watching you, my love." Jenna was there, a few steps away from me, but she seemed to belong to another world. Her eyes were empty, her face as pale as a stone statue. I wanted to go to her, to take my daughter-in-law's hand. But something in her gaze stopped me, a pain too great, too deep, that I didn't know how to reach. After Michael's death, this house was shrouded in a gloomy fog. The smile vanished from Jenna's face. She became quiet, reserved. She would spend hours locked in her room. Some days I would hear her sobbing behind the closed door, but every time I knocked to go in, she would answer me coldly. "I'm fine, don't worry, Mom." I wanted to believe that Jenna would get over it, that time would heal her wounds, but I was wrong. The pain not only pushed her away from me, but it also turned her into someone I no longer recognized. Not long after, Jenna decided to move to an apartment in another neighborhood. "I need a fresh start, Mom," she told me in a monotone voice, avoiding my eyes. I understood that she not only wanted to leave this house, but also to escape the memories of Michael, the memories that every corner and every object brought back. I didn't blame her, but my heart broke when Lily had to go with her. The little girl was the only light I had left in my life, and now I could only see her on the few weekends they let her stay with me. The house became huge and cold. I kept Michael's picture on the wall, next to a family photo from a day out, when Lily was just a baby, sitting on her father's shoulders, laughing her head off. Every night I would sit in front of that photo and whisper to my son, "Michael, what should I do? I miss you so much." But only the wind whistling down the hallway answered me, reminding me that now I was left with only loneliness. In subsequent visits, I noticed that Lily was changing. Her eyes, once bright and clear, now reflected a sadness that was hard to name. She spoke less, smiled less, and whenever I tried to ask her something, she would lower her head and hug her teddy bear Milo tightly, as if it were her only shield. "I'm fine, Grandma," she always told me, but her gaze told another story. I asked Jenna about it, but she would only give me evasive answers. "Don't worry, Mom, I take good care of Lily." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think she was doing everything possible to be a good mother. But inside, a growing unease consumed me. I had no choice but to swallow my tears and watch helplessly as my granddaughter drifted further and further away. And it was then that today, that veil of secrecy was shattered by a terrifying whisper from my little Lily's mouth. I tried to calm Lily down after her confession, gently stroking her messy hair, whispering to her, "It's okay, my love. Grandma will take care of everything." But Lily just shook her head, her tear-filled eyes closing tightly, as if she wanted to hide from the world. She clutched Milo, the worn-out teddy bear that had become her only friend in these lonely days, to her chest. I wanted to ask her more, to pull out more details, but seeing her little shoulders trembling, I didn't have the courage to insist. "Come on, sweetie, rest for a little while," I said, my voice as gentle as I could make it, even though a hurricane was raging inside me. That afternoon, I decided to take Lily to school. The girl needed the familiar environment of the classroom, of her friends, to forget for a little while the fear that was consuming her. I held her hand as we walked along the familiar gravel path, but every step felt heavy. Lily remained silent the whole way, only looking up from time to time, as if she wanted to say something but didn't dare. I smiled, trying to hide the anguish that was eating me up inside. "What are you going to learn in school today?" I asked. But Lily just shook her head without answering. I knew she was carrying a weight far too heavy for her age. When we arrived at the school, I decided to stay for a moment to speak with Mrs. Davis, Lily's teacher. Mrs. Davis was a middle-aged woman with kind but sharp eyes, always attentive to her students. I found her in the teacher's lounge, where the smell of chalk and paper still lingered. "Mrs. Davis, can I talk to you for a moment?" I asked in a low voice, as if afraid someone would overhear. Mrs. Davis looked at me with a hint of concern. "Of course, Carol. Is something wrong with Lily?" I sat in an old wooden chair in the room, and I told her what Lily had said to me that morning. My voice trembled when I mentioned the girl locked in the basement. Mrs. Davis listened attentively, her brow furrowed and her hands clasped tightly. When I finished, she hesitated for a few seconds, as if choosing each word carefully. "Carol, I've also noticed that Lily has changed lately. She gets scared easily. Sometimes she just zones out in class, unable to concentrate." She paused, looking at me with unease. "And, in art class, she's been making some very strange drawings. It's almost always a little girl alone in a dark room, and behind her are messy black lines, as if they were bars." My heart sank, as if someone were squeezing it. Those black lines, like bars. Mrs. Davis's words were a direct hit, confirming my fears. "Do you think that's something out of the ordinary?" I asked, almost in a whisper. Mrs. Davis shook her head, her gaze unsettled. "I can't say for sure, but I'm worried about her emotional state. Maybe she's going through something very difficult." I nodded, feeling the floor crumble beneath my feet. "Thank you, Mrs. Davis," I said, getting up, though my legs trembled as if they couldn't support me. On my way home, I walked like a ghost. The images of Lily's drawings, the girl in the dark room and the black lines like bars, wouldn't leave me. I wondered, what had Lily seen? Did a locked-up girl really exist? Or was it just the imagination of a deeply hurt little girl? But her frightened eyes, her trembling voice wouldn't let me dismiss the story. I needed more clues, more proof to understand what was happening. In the afternoon, I sat on the porch, watching the red bougainvillea petals fall in the yard. The wind was blowing hard, and I shivered, as if it carried a warning. Suddenly, I saw Mr. Henderson, the kind elderly neighbor, pass by. Mr. Henderson was well liked in the neighborhood, a widower with a sharp gaze, as if nothing on that cul-de-sac could escape him. Seeing my downcast expression, he stopped, resting his wooden cane on the step. "Carol, are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." I smiled weakly, trying to hide my worry. "I'm just a little tired, Mr. Henderson. How are you?" But he wasn't fooled. He sat on the wooden bench next to me and, in a grave voice, said, "Carol, I know you're not one to worry about trivial things. Is something wrong with Lily?" I hesitated, not knowing if I should share it or not. But remembering Lily's scared look, I decided to tell him, just a part of it, enough to feel him out. "Lily told me something strange, about a girl at Jenna's house. I don't know what to think anymore." Mr. Henderson frowned. His eyes sharpened. After a moment of silence, he lowered his voice, as if afraid someone would hear. "Carol, there's something I haven't told anyone. One night last week, I couldn't sleep, and I went out into the yard. I saw Jenna hurry into the house, holding a little girl's hand. I'm sure it wasn't Lily. It was very late, past midnight." He paused. He looked at me, as if hesitating to continue. I also heard a muffled sob. At the time, I thought it might be Lily, sick and crying. But now that I hear you, it's starting to seem strange. Mr. Henderson's words struck me like lightning. My heart was pounding. My hands gripped the edge of my coat. "Are you sure, Mr. Henderson? Did you get a good look at her?" I asked with a trembling voice. He nodded, his expression thoughtful. I couldn't make out her face, but it wasn't Lily. She was smaller, with shorter hair. I didn't want to say anything, for fear of misjudging Jenna, but be careful. I nodded, feeling as if loose pieces were beginning to fit into a terrifying picture in my mind. That evening, Jenna came to pick up Lily. I stood at the door, watching her come in, my heart heavy. Her gaze, sharp as a knife, scanned me from head to toe, as if assessing how much I knew. "Thanks for watching, Lily," she said coldly, without a hint of her former warmth. Lily hid behind her mother, hugging Milo, her teddy bear, tightly, looking at me with worried eyes. I wanted to keep her there, to ask more, but Jenna's glare stopped me. She took Lily by the hand and pulled her away quickly, without another word. I remained on the threshold, watching their silhouettes disappear down the street, my heart heavy. At dawn, I woke up with an unbearable weight on my chest, as if the whole world was against me. I had decided to step out of my comfort zone and face the truth, even if it hurt. I took the first bus downtown, sitting silently in the back, looking through the fogged-up window. The familiar streets passed by, but that day they felt distant, cold. The police station came into view, an old building with stained walls. I went inside, and the air, thick with the smell of damp paper and burnt coffee, intensified my anxiety. I stood in front of the front desk, my trembling hands clutching my coat, trying to keep my voice steady. "I want to speak with whoever is in charge," I told the young officer who was glancing through some records. He looked at me with a spark of curiosity and then led me to a small room where Detective Morales was sitting behind a scratched wooden desk. Morales was a middle-aged man with a hardened face and tired eyes, as if he had witnessed too many painful stories. I sat down, took a deep breath, and began to tell him everything. I spoke of Lily's whisper, of the girl locked in the basement, of the strange drawings Mrs. Davis described, and of Mr. Henderson's account of the unknown girl who appeared in the night. My voice trembled, but I tried to speak clearly, as if each word were a brick building a wall of truth. "Sir, I know this sounds crazy, but Lily isn't lying. My granddaughter is scared, and I believe something very bad is happening." I finished, looking fixedly into Morales' eyes, hoping he could see the urgency in mine. Morales listened, his hand tapping a steady rhythm on the desk, but when I finished, he slowly shook his head. "Ma'am, I understand your concern," he said in a flat, emotionless voice. "But all we have is the word of a child, a few drawings, and a neighbor's testimony. That's not enough legal ground to request a search warrant for your daughter-in-law's house." His words were like a bucket of cold water in my face. I felt the blood drain from my body. I clenched my hands tightly to stop the trembling. "What if there really is a child in danger, sir?" I pleaded, my voice breaking. "If Lily is telling the truth and we do nothing, what will happen to that girl?" Morales sighed, and a faint glimmer of compassion appeared in his eyes. "We'll file your report," he replied with the same coolness. "But for now, you have to wait. We need more concrete evidence." I wanted to scream, to say that time waits for no one, that every minute could be a minute of danger for the girl Lily spoke of. But I just nodded, got up, and felt that my legs could barely hold me. "Thank you, sir," I murmured, though inside I just wanted to scream with helplessness. Leaving the police station, I felt as if the whole world had turned its back on me. The midday sun was beating down, but I only felt cold. I walked to the bus stop with my mind blank, repeating to myself over and over, "What do I do now?" I had hoped the police would act immediately, that they would believe Lily's words. But now I was left with only loneliness and the fear of not being able to protect either my granddaughter or that nameless child. That afternoon, I went to the grocery store to buy some food, trying to keep busy with everyday tasks to stay calm. But as I walked past the familiar aisles, I heard the whispers. "Old Carol is losing it. She must have some problems upstairs," one of the cashiers muttered to her colleague, loud enough for me to hear. "Who accuses their own daughter-in-law of kidnapping kids?" I stopped, feeling a dagger in my heart. I turned towards her, but she immediately looked down, pretending to be busy with the items on her counter. I knew in that instant. Jenna had acted faster than I thought. She had already spread the word throughout the neighborhood, saying I was delusional from missing Lily so much that I had invented a story to get my granddaughter back. I returned home with my heart as heavy as a rock. I sat on the porch, watching the bougainvillea flowers fall, trying to find some peace. But the tragedy reached its peak that very night. When the sun went down, I heard a car pull up to the gate. Jenna came to get Lily, but this time she didn't come into the house as usual. She stayed in the yard, hugging Lily tightly, crying inconsolably in front of her brother, Kevin. "She's slandering me, Kevin," Jenna cried, her voice broken. "She says I kidnap children, that she wants to ruin my life. I just want to take care of Lily, and she does this to me. Kevin, a tall, rough man, came up to me, pointing his finger and growling. "Ma'am, please leave my family alone. Who do you think you are, slandering my sister like that?" I stood motionless, my heart squeezed as if it were being strangled. The neighbors began to gather on the street, and all those looks of curiosity, pity, and distrust were fixed on me. "Carol must miss her granddaughter too much. That's why she's making things up," someone murmured. "Poor thing, she's getting old," another agreed. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say that I wasn't crazy, that Lily had seen something awful, but the words got stuck in my throat. I just stood there, motionless, feeling the whole world turn against me. From the car, Lily turned to look at me through the window. Her eyes were full of sadness and desperation, as if to say, "Grandma, save me." I wanted to run to her, to hug her, not to let her go, but my legs were rooted to the spot. Jenna started the engine, and the car drove away, leaving my granddaughter behind and me alone, exposed under the stares of the neighborhood. I heard the murmurs behind me, from people who were once close neighbors and now looked at me like a delusional old woman. I might have been alone, but deep down, I knew I couldn't give up. Stumbling, I went into the house after that bitter confrontation in front of the neighbors. My steps were heavy, as if chained by suspicious glances and whispers. I thought I had grown accustomed to the pain of loss, but now I felt like a dry leaf, swept away by the wind, with no strength to resist the storm. I collapsed onto the old living room armchair, my eyes fixed on Michael's portrait on the wall. My son's smile was as warm as ever, but it only tore me up more inside. "Michael, what should I do?" I whispered, my voice breaking in the quiet room. No one answered, only the whistling of the wind on the porch and the news on the television, which I wasn't listening to. The only thing I could hear was my heart screaming in silence. I stayed there, my face in my hands, feeling as if the whole world had turned its back on me. The image of Lily looking at me from the car window, with that infinite sadness, was like a knife piercing my soul. Jenna had managed to turn me into the neighborhood crazy lady. Her rumors, that I was hallucinating because I missed my granddaughter too much, were like needles stabbing at my pride. I had pinned all my hopes on the visit to the police station, but I only received the cold refusal of Detective Morales. "There's not enough evidence," he had told me. How could I wait when Lily was terrified, when perhaps another unknown girl was in danger? I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, my eyes open, staring at the ceiling, listening to the ticking of the clock that marked every second of my helplessness. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lily's gaze, or I heard her terrifying whisper again. "There's a little girl, locked in the basement." I turned over, hugging the pillow where Lily had slept the night before, as if it still held her scent, as if it could give me the strength to go on. But all I felt was an icy void in my chest. I asked myself, "Carol, are you doing the right thing? Or are you really just a delusional old woman, like they say?" The next morning, I still tried to go to the grocery store as usual, hoping the hustle and bustle would help distract me. But when I entered, I felt a noticeable change. The usual vendors, those who used to greet me with a friendly smile, now fell silent when they saw me from a distance. They would lean towards each other, murmuring, and their glances were a mix of pity and distance. Poor Carol. She must miss her granddaughter so much she's lost her mind. I heard a vegetable seller whisper to the one next to her. I lowered my head, quickened my pace, and pretended not to have heard, but each word hit me like a hammer blow to the chest. I wanted to scream, to tell them I wasn't crazy, that Lily had seen something terrible, but I knew that doing so would only make everyone believe Jenna's story even more. On my way home, I ran into Rose, my closest friend in the neighborhood. She was standing at her door with a wicker basket in her hands, and her face filled with concern when she saw me. Unlike the others, Rose didn't avoid me. She came over, led me to a corner by the fence, and squeezed my hands tightly. "Carol, I know you," she said in a low but firm voice. "I don't believe you'd make this up. I saw Lily's eyes last night when Jenna took her. The child was terrified, Carol. If you give up now, that regret will follow you for the rest of your life." Her words shot through me like a bolt of lightning. They didn't dispel my despair, but they did ignite a tiny spark of hope. I took her hand, tears welling up in my eyes. "Rose, thank you," I whispered. "But I don't know what to do anymore. Nobody believes me." Rose squeezed my hand tighter, with a determination in her eyes that I hadn't seen in myself for a long time. "You have to keep going, Carol, for Lily and for yourself. Don't let the gossip make you back down." I nodded, though my heart was still heavy. Rose was right. I couldn't give up. But what could I do when I felt the entire world was against me? That afternoon, I started trimming the bougainvillea in the yard, seeking a little peace in routine. The red petals fell to the ground like little drops of blood, heightening my anxiety. Suddenly, I heard hurried footsteps. Mr. Henderson, the elderly neighbor, appeared at the gate with a bag of coffee in his hand and a mysterious look on his face. "Carol, you have to see this," he said, lowering his voice as if afraid someone would hear him. I stopped what I was doing, my heart tightening. "What is it, Mr. Henderson?" I asked, moving closer. He led me inside, closed the door securely, and pulled an old cell phone from his pocket. "I asked my nephew at the corner store to check the security cameras from last week," he explained, his voice trembling with excitement. "Look, Carol, I think you need to see this." The screen lit up, showing blurry, grainy images. I held my breath and stared at the video. It was Jenna, my daughter-in-law, the one who was once part of my family, leading an unknown little girl by the hand, hurrying into her house in the middle of the night. The little girl was wearing worn-out pajamas, her hair was tangled, and she was smaller than Lily, walking clumsily as if she were afraid. I, Carol, a 65-year-old woman, felt the ground open up beneath my feet. Lily's whisper about a girl locked in the basement was no longer the confused story of a child. It was true, and this video was the proof I had prayed for. I looked at Mr. Henderson, my voice catching. "Mr. Henderson, are you sure? Could there be a mistake?" I asked, although deep down I already knew the answer. He nodded firmly, his gaze more serious than ever. "There can't be a mistake, Carol. I saw that scene with my own eyes. I just didn't realize the camera recorded it too. I was in the yard that night, and I know it wasn't Lily." His words were like a stab, painful but also strengthening. I gripped the phone tightly, as if it were the only life raft in the middle of the storm that was drowning me. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson," I whispered, on the verge of tears. "You don't know how important this is to me." Without a second's hesitation, I decided I had to take this video to the police station immediately. I couldn't wait any longer. Every minute that passed was a minute that the girl in the video, and perhaps Lily too, was still in danger. I quickly put on an old coat, covered my head with a scarf, and left Mr. Henderson's house with my heart on fire. The gravel path leading to the station seemed longer today, each step heavy but filled with determination. I thought of Lily, of her frightened eyes, and of Michael, my son, who would surely want me to protect his daughter at all costs. When I entered the police station, the air still smelled of old papers and burnt coffee, but this time I didn't feel afraid. I had proof, and I wouldn't leave until they acted. I asked to speak with Detective Morales immediately. The young officer at the reception desk looked at me, perhaps noticing the urgency in my eyes, and quickly led me to the familiar room. Morales was sitting behind the desk, his face hard and his eyes tired. "Carol, you're here again," he said with a hint of surprise. "Is there something new?" I took a deep breath. I placed Mr. Henderson's phone on the desk and said, "Sir, I have proof. Please, watch this video." I played the clip, and the image of Jenna and the unknown girl appeared on the screen. I recounted what Mr. Henderson had seen, what Lily had told me, and also the strange drawings she had made in school. My voice trembled, but I tried to sound clear and firm. "That is not Lily, and I don't know who this girl is, but I think she's in danger." Morales watched the video, frowning slightly, but his gaze was still full of doubt. "She could just be looking after a friend's daughter," he said in a monotone voice. His words were another stab that made my heart shrink. I couldn't let him dismiss this evidence. I leaned forward, almost pleading. "I'm begging you, investigate further. That little girl is not from our neighborhood. I've lived there for so many years. I know it. And Lily, my granddaughter, is terrified. She talks about a girl locked in a basement crying, saying her hand hurts. Please believe me." Perhaps the urgency in my voice or the desperation in my eyes made Morales hesitate. He signaled to a young officer nearby. "Check if there are any missing person reports that match this girl's description," he ordered seriously. The officer nodded, checked the files, and began typing quickly on the computer. I sat there, my heart pounding, my hands gripping the edge of my coat, as if holding on to my last hope. After a few minutes, the young officer suddenly exclaimed, "Detective, look at this. The girl in the video matches the description of Sophie, 5 years old, reported missing 2 weeks ago from the next town over." He showed the computer screen to Morales, and I saw his face change immediately. His tired eyes now shone with a seriousness I had never seen. He stood up abruptly and said firmly, "Verify this information immediately. Contact the precinct in the neighboring town. Request the complete disappearance file." My heart was pounding inside my chest, as if it would burst. Here it was. This was the proof I needed. The girl's name, Sophie, was like a lightning bolt that pierced the darkness of my soul. I looked at Morales, tears about to stream down my face, but I held them back. "Thank you, sir," I whispered with a choked voice. "Thank you for listening." Morales didn't reply, just nodded, but I saw a change in his eyes. There were no more doubts, only a cold determination. At that moment, the station door burst open, and some neighbors entered with worried looks. I recognized them. Mrs. Elena, who sells tamales on the corner, and Mr. Miguel, who often plays chess with Mr. Henderson. Mrs. Elena spoke first, her voice trembling. "Detective, we heard Carol came about Jenna. We also have something to say." She hesitated for a moment and looked at me, as if asking for permission. I nodded, encouraging her to continue. "We've heard crying, strange noises from Jenna's house. Even on the nights Lily stayed with Carol. At first, we thought it was just a child's tantrums, but now we're not so sure." Mr. Miguel nodded and added, "One time I saw a light flickering in her basement, just before dawn. I didn't think anything of it, but now that I think about it, it seems strange." I nixed. Their words were like the final pieces of a puzzle, completing the terrifying picture that was already forming in my mind. I looked at Morales, hoping he would see the gravity of the situation. He nodded, and in his eyes, there was no longer a shred of doubt. "There's enough evidence, ma'am," he said in a firm voice. "We will request a search warrant immediately." I nodded as the tears finally streamed down my face. For the first time, after so many dark days, I saw a ray of hope. I returned home after leaving the police station, my mind in a knot, happy that they had finally decided to act, but also fearful of what was to come. I thought I was used to life's storms, but now I was facing a hurricane that I didn't know if I could withstand. Mr. Henderson's video, the confirmation about Sophie, and the neighbors' accounts had ignited a spark of hope, but they also made me tremble at the thought of what I was about to face. Jenna, my daughter-in-law, who was once part of my family, was now on the other side of the truth, and I didn't know what awaited me when the veil of secrecy was lifted. I couldn't sleep a wink that night. The patter of rain on the tin roof sounded like a war drum, echoing in the small house. I sat in the living room, under the yellow light that cast shadows on Michael's photo on the wall. My son's smile was still tender, but his eyes seemed to look at me, as if saying, "Mom, you have to be strong." I clasped my hands and murmured a prayer, asking for Michael's spirit to protect my granddaughter, Lily, and little Sophie, that innocent child I never knew, but who was now the reason I had to keep fighting. "Michael, help me," I said with a broken voice. "Help me protect them." "How?" I thought of Lily, of my granddaughter's frightened gaze, of the terrifying whisper in the kitchen that morning. I thought of Sophie, the girl in the video, with her torn pajamas and her faltering walk. Each image was like a stab that pained my heart, but it also gave me more determination. I couldn't let those girls suffer for another minute, but I was also afraid that when the truth came out, it would shatter what little was left of my family. Jenna, although she had changed, was still Lily's mother, the one who once called me Mom. How could I face her? How could I bear the truth that she could be involved in something so horrible? The next morning, I went to the grocery store as usual, trying to cling to my routines so as not to be overwhelmed by anxiety. But the atmosphere at the store was different. The curious glances, the whispers. followed me like a shadow. Is Carol accusing her daughter-in-law again? A fruit vendor muttered to the woman next to her, thinking I couldn't hear. She must miss her granddaughter so much she's gone crazy. I lowered my head and hurried my steps, not wanting to face those looks of pity or suspicion. I bought a few necessary items, some vegetables, some bread, and quickly returned home with a heavy heart. I didn't care about the gossip anymore. I just wanted to focus on Lily, on Sophie, on what was to come. At noon, Rose, my old friend of a lifetime, arrived with a plate of still warm casserole. She entered the house, put the plate on the table, and sat beside me, squeezing my hand tightly. "Carol, be brave," she said, her voice warm but firm. "I know how much you're suffering, but the truth will come out. Don't let the talk make you back down." I looked into her eyes and found deep empathy in them. She was one of the few people who didn't turn her back on me, who didn't see me as a delusional old woman. "Rose, I'm scared," I confessed, my voice trembling. "If the truth is too terrible, I don't know how I'll face it. Lily, my granddaughter, what will become of her and her mother?" Rose squeezed my hand tighter, interrupting me. "Carol, you are the strongest woman I know. You lost Michael and still stood tall for Lily. Don't doubt yourself. You are doing the right thing." Evan 4. Her words were like a small flame that warmed my frozen heart. I nodded, with tears streaming down my cheeks. "Thank you, Rose," I whispered. "I'll do my best." She smiled, gave me a pat on the shoulder, and got up to leave, leaving me with the plate of casserole that smelled delicious, but which I had no appetite to eat. Later that afternoon, Mr. Henderson approached, his face full of concern. He sat on the bench at the entrance, leaning on his cane, and spoke in a low voice, as if afraid someone would hear him. "Carol, last night I heard strange noises again at Jenna's house," he said, his gaze serious. "It sounded like someone was banging on a door, and then I heard muffled sobs. I didn't dare get closer, but I'm sure something is wrong." His words tied a knot in my chest. I thought of Sophie, of what Lily had said, and I felt as if an invisible hand were strangling me. "Mr. Henderson, do you think that little girl is still there?" I asked with a broken voice. He nodded, his eyes filled with unease. "I don't know, Carol, but I hope the police clear everything up soon." I took his hand, thanking him once again for not turning his back on me. Mr. Henderson's news left me even more unsettled, but it also reinforced my conviction that what Lily said was true. I couldn't let that child, Sophie, continue to suffer. I had to act, even if only a tiny spark of hope remained. That night I called Mrs. Davis, Lily's teacher, on the phone. I told her what was happening with a trembling voice. "Mrs. Davis, if anything happens to Lily, please take care of her for me. I don't know what might happen tomorrow, but I need to know she'll be safe." Mrs. Davis agreed immediately, without hesitation. "Carol, don't worry. I will keep an eye on Lily. You do what you have to do." Her words relieved me a little, although the anguish still weighed heavily on my chest. Before going to bed, I carefully put away my documents, the family records, and also Lily's strange drawings in a small bag. I didn't know what the next day would bring, but I wanted to be ready for anything. I sat in front of Michael's photo, whispering, "Son, I'm doing what I can. I won't let Lily suffer anymore." I closed my eyes, seeking a little peace, but my heart was still in turmoil. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, the phone rang sharply, breaking the silence of the house. I jumped, answering immediately, my heart pounding. It was the voice of Detective Morales, brief but firm. "Carol, tomorrow at dawn we are going to search Jenna's house. Be ready." I sank into the chair, the receiver trembling in my hands. "Thank you, sir," I murmured with a choked voice. "I'll be ready." I hung up and looked out the window, where the rain was beating down relentlessly. Its sound was like a reminder that the real storm was about to arrive. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The dim light barely filtered through the crack in the window. My chest felt like it was on fire, as if the whole world were pressing down on me. Today was the decisive day, the day when the painful or terrifying truth would come to light. I put on a thick coat, wrapped myself in a scarf, and with trembling hands, I tied my shoes. I looked at Michael's photo on the wall and whispered, "Son, give me strength. the image of Lily, with her frightened eyes, and that of Sophie from Mr. Henderson's video, kept running through my head, pushing me to go on even though fear paralyzed me. The sharp sound of patrol cars stopping in front of my house pulled me from my thoughts. Detective Morales got out of the car, his stern face showing no emotion. "Let's go, Carol," he said in a firm voice. I nodded, clutching the bag with the papers and Lily's drawings tightly, as if they were a lucky charm. I got into the car, remaining silent in the back seat, looking out the fogged-up window. The drive to Jenna's house seemed shorter than ever, but each second weighed like a century. I thought of Lily, of Sophie, and I wondered, will I have the strength to face the truth? We arrived at Jenna's house when the sky was still gray, with dark clouds floating above, as if heralding a storm. The cold wind blew in gusts, making the red petals of the bougainvillea fall onto the yard like drops of blood. I stood in front of the gate, my heart beating rapidly, feeling my whole body tremble. Morales knocked on the door. The sharp raps echoed in the silence. The door flew open, and Jenna appeared. Her face was pale with surprise, but only for an instant, because then her expression turned to fury. "What are you doing here?" she shouted, her voice icy, as if trying to hide a very deep fear. Morales coolly held up the search warrant in front of her. "We have a legal warrant. I'm asking you to cooperate," he said in a firm, unwavering voice. Jenna looked at the paper and then at me, with eyes that looked like knives, stabbing right into my chest. "You did this, didn't you?" She spat the words, pointing her finger at me. "You want to destroy me? You want to take Lily away from me?" I remained silent, my hands gripping the edge of my coat, not responding. I wanted to tell her that all I wanted was to protect Lily, to save little Sophie, but the words got stuck in my throat. I could only look at her, she who was once my daughter-in-law and who now seemed like a stranger. Suddenly, Kevin, Jenna's brother, rushed out of the house, his neck tense, shouting, "This is private property. You have no right. You're slandering and humiliating my family." He was a burly man, his voice roared like a cornered animal. Morales didn't bother to answer, just signaled for his team of officers to enter. I stood motionless in the yard, and through a crack in the door, I managed to see Lily huddled in a corner of the living room, hugging her teddy bear, Milo, tightly. Her little eyes were red and swollen, as if she had been crying a lot. I wanted to run to her, to tell her that her grandmother was there, that everything would be okay, but Jenna's cold glare stopped me. The police began to search every room. The sound of their boots hitting the tile floor mixed with the rustling of papers. The atmosphere was so tense, it felt like the entire house was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible. Jenna followed them, crying and screaming, "It's all my mother-in-law's fault. She wants to ruin my life. How can you believe a crazy old woman?" Her words were like knives piercing my heart. I wanted to scream that I wasn't crazy, that I only wanted to protect Lily, but I stood there, in silence, with the feeling that the whole world was against me. Morales didn't respond to her. He led his team directly to the end of the hallway, where there was a small, old iron door that led to the basement. I immediately felt the air change. Jenna's face transformed into a true expression of panic. She ran, spreading her arms to block the entrance, her voice broken. "There's nothing in there. It's just an old storage room. No one can open it." The desperation in her tone tied a knot in my chest. I knew, in that instant, that Lily had told the truth. Something horrible was hidden behind that door. One of the officers stepped forward. He calmly inserted a master key into the rusty lock. Kevin roared, trying to lunge at him to stop him, but two officers immediately restrained him. "You can't open it!" he shouted, struggling, but his strength was not enough to break free from these burly men. I almost stopped breathing. My hands clenched until they hurt. The neighbors were already gathering on the street, murmuring, their gazes fixed on the house. I heard someone say, "My God, could what Carol said be true?" But I had no room for that in my head. All my attention was on that iron door. The lock opened with a sharp click. The officer pulled hard on the door, and a chilling creak echoed, like the scream of a long-buried secret. From the deep darkness inside, a faint, trembling child's cry could be heard, like a restrained plea for help. The basement door burst open, and a gust of damp, musty air shot out, as if the darkness itself were exhaling terrifying secrets. I was standing in the yard of Jenna's house, feeling my heart stop. The soft sob from inside was faint but clear, like a plea from beyond the grave. A police officer turned on his flashlight. The beam of light swept across the stained walls, the torn cardboard boxes, and then, from a shadowy corner, a small silhouette came staggering out. It was Sophie, the girl from the video, the girl Lily had spoken of with fear in her eyes. Her hair was matted, her face covered in dust, her torn pajamas stuck to her thin body. Her left arm was crudely wrapped in a dirty rag, and her wide-open eyes stared in panic at the strangers around her. I was stunned. My legs gave way. I had to grab onto a porch column to keep from falling. The image of Sophie, so small and fragile, was like a knife to my heart. I thought of Lily, of what she must have witnessed, and tears welled up in my eyes, rolling down my cheeks. "Sophie," I whispered with a broken voice, as if saying her name could ease her pain. A female officer ran forward, lifted Sophie into her arms, holding her tightly against her chest as if to protect her. "Call for an ambulance, now!" she shouted, her voice filled with urgency. The little girl clutched an old, faded cushion, her hands trembling, as if it were the only thing left of her safe world. The neighbors crowded into the yard, all stunned. The murmurs grew like a wave. "My God, it's true! Carol was telling the truth after all," a voice said, and I could hear the regret in it. The same people who had turned their backs on me, who had called me a crazy old woman, were now standing there, heads bowed, unable to look me in the eye. But I felt no triumph, only pain. Pain for Sophie, pain for Lily, and pain for myself, watching my family break apart once more. Jenna screamed, her voice unhinged, lunging towards the policewoman holding Sophie. "No, I didn't lock her up. I was just trying to protect her," she shrieked, tears streaming down her pale face. But her voice no longer held any conviction. It was nothing more than the desperate cry of someone who knew her secret had been discovered. Kevin, Jenna's brother, was still struggling, trying to defend her, while two officers held him firmly. "This is a trap. They're setting my sister up. It's all a plan by that old woman," he yelled, pointing at me, his eyes blazing. I remained motionless, not answering, just looking at him, and then at Jenna, my soul torn. I once considered them family, but now they were like strangers, standing on the other side of the truth. Detective Morales interrupted with an icy voice. "Quiet. The crime is in plain sight." He motioned for his team to continue searching the basement. They rummaged through old boxes, checked every corner, and then an officer held up a bundle of documents, his voice trembling. "Detective, you have to see this." I held my breath as I watched Morales open the package. They were notebooks, filled with strange symbols, disordered phrases about a dark sect. In one of them, I saw the name Esteban Vargas written in scrawls, next to a signature. Morales frowned, and his voice became grave. Esteban Vargas. This name sounds familiar. He was the leader of an extremist group the press exposed last year. Morales's words were like a thunderbolt, stunning both me and the crowd around us. I thought of Jenna, of the changes she went through after Michael's death, of her strange gaze, of the terrifying silence she kept whenever I asked her about Lily. How could she get involved with someone like Esteban Vargas? How could someone who was once my sweet daughter-in-law fall down such a dark path? I wanted to run to her, to ask her, to understand why, but my legs were rooted to the ground. Sophie was taken to the ambulance. The little girl was weak, her eyes still filled with panic, but her tiny voice rose like a plea. "Mommy, I want to go back to Mommy." Those words broke my heart. I thought of Sophie's mother, who was surely suffering somewhere, waiting for her daughter, and I prayed that they would soon be reunited. I looked towards Lily, saw her huddled in a corner, her eyes red, watching the ambulance drive away. I wanted to run and hug her, but Morales signaled for me to stay put, as if he knew this moment wasn't over yet. Jenna was handcuffed. Two officers led her out of the house. As she passed by me, she stopped. Her eyes shone with hatred. "You destroyed everything," she said through gritted teeth, her voice trembling with rage and pain. I looked into her eyes, trying to find any trace of the daughter-in-law I once loved, but I only found an unfamiliar coldness. I returned home after a long day at the police station, my body exhausted, but my heart still in shock. I had been through the darkest days of my life, but now, with the truth exposed, I felt a ray of hope filter into my heart. The news of the case spread like a wildfire, and our small town suddenly became the center of attention. The press, the television stations arrived, satellite trucks filled the street, and reporters with cameras and microphones relentlessly asked about the story of Sophie, of Lily, and of me. But I didn't want to talk much. I just wanted to be by Lily's side, to hug her tightly and know that she was safe. I went to the hospital in the afternoon, where Sophie was being treated. Her parents, the Jacksons, had arrived immediately after receiving the call from the police. I stood in the hallway, looking through the glass, watching them desperately hug the daughter they thought they had lost forever, crying with choked sobs. Mrs. Jackson, a thin woman with red-rimmed eyes, held Sophie, whispering words of love, while Mr. Jackson, beside her, wiped away his tears, struggling to keep his voice steady as he thanked the doctors. That moment broke my heart, but it also filled me with a strange warmth. I thought of Lily, of the fear she had endured, and I knew that all my efforts had not been in vain. The Jacksons approached me as I stood silently in the hallway. Mrs. Jackson squeezed my hand tightly, her voice choked. "Carol, we don't know how to thank you. If it weren't for you and Lily, we might have lost our daughter forever." Mr. Jackson nodded, his eyes moist. "You gave us back the light of our lives. Sophie is everything to us." I smiled, as tears rolled down my cheeks. "I only did what anyone would do," I said with a trembling voice. "The real hero is Lily. My granddaughter had the courage to tell the truth, even though she was very scared." They nodded, squeezing my hand tighter, and in that gesture I felt a deep gratitude, like a fire warming my frozen heart. Outside the hospital entrance, I saw a group of neighbors waiting. Those who once whispered behind my back, who called me the crazy old bat, now looked at me with different eyes. Mrs. Elena, the casserole lady, approached, bowed her head, and with a trembling voice, said, "Carol, we were wrong to doubt you. Please, forgive us." Mr. Miguel, who used to play chess with Mr. Henderson, also came near, his gaze full of guilt. "You did what none of us dared to do. You truly are a hero." I shook my head, smiling slightly. "I'm not a hero. I'm just a grandmother who wants to protect her granddaughter." But inside, I felt a small relief. The looks of mistrust had disappeared, replaced by respect, and I knew that, although late, the truth had triumphed. The entire community began to praise Lily as a little hero. They spoke of her bravery, of how an 8-year-old girl dared to tell the truth, even when she had to face the fear and doubt of the whole world. I listened to these words, and my heart filled with both pride and pain. Lily didn't deserve to go through this. She should have had a carefree childhood, full of laughter and worry-free days. But I knew my Lily was stronger than I imagined, and I would do everything possible to help her heal from these wounds. The police announced the preliminary results of the investigation the next day. Jenna was charged with kidnapping, unlawful detention, and ties to a dangerous sect. The notebooks found in the basement, with Esteban Vargas's signature, opened a broader investigation into a criminal network the police had been tracking for some time. Kevin, Jenna's brother, was also investigated for obstruction, though he denied everything. I heard this news on the evening newscast, sitting in the living room, hugging the pillow where Lily used to sleep tightly. I thought of Jenna, of the young woman who was once my daughter-in-law, who smiled radiantly at family dinners. What had made her change? What led her down this dark path? I had no answers, but I knew that the truth, however painful, had come to light. A few days later, my house was once again filled with laughter. For the first time after so many gray months, Lily and Sophie were playing together on the porch, under the red bougainvillea vine. Sophie was much better. Her smile had returned, although her eyes still held a faint trace of fear. Lily, with her bare Milo in her hand, ran around, laughing as Sophie tried to catch her. I watched them from the doorway, my heart warm but also heavy. I knew that their healing journey would be long, but that moment, with their laughter echoing, was a new beginning. The Jackson family came to visit me in the afternoon, bringing a bouquet of fresh flowers and a homemade pie. Mrs. Jackson took my hand with an emotional voice. "Carol, we want you to be Sophie's adoptive grandmother. You saved her life, And we want her to have another family, a grandmother like you." I was stunned. Tears welled up again. I don't know what to say," I whispered, hugging Lily and Sophie. "You are the light, the hope for all of us." Sophie looked at me with a shy smile, and in her eyes, I saw a trust I had never seen before. That night, when Lily snuggled up beside me in bed, she asked me in a soft voice, "Grandma, am I a real hero?" I smiled. I kissed her sun-scented hair. "Yes, my love, you are your grandma's bravest hero because you dared to believe in the truth and to speak it out loud." Lily smiled, for the first time in so many days, and I saw the light return to her eyes. She hugged me tightly, whispering, "I love you, Grandma." I held her close with silent tears. "I love you too, Lily." Outside, the night breeze gently moved the bougainvillea, letting petals fall under the bright moon. I closed my eyes, feeling a strange peace. I thought of Michael, of his smile, and I knew that, from heaven, my son was also smiling. He must be proud, because his daughter had saved a life, and because the truth had finally conquered the darkness. I hugged Lily tighter, and in silence, whispered in my heart, "Michael, I did it. I kept my promise to you." And in that moment, I knew that, although there were still trials ahead, the light had returned to our small family. The story you have just heard has had names and places changed to protect the identities of those involved. We don't tell this to judge, but in the hope that someone will listen and stop to reflect. How many mothers are suffering in silence within their own homes? I truly wonder. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you choose to stay silent to keep the peace, or would you dare to face it all to reclaim your voice? I want to know your opinion, because every story is like a candle that can light someone else's path. God always blesses, and I am convinced that courage leads us to better days. In the meantime, on the end screen, I'm leaving you two of the channel's most beloved stories. I'm sure they will surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.
Did you enjoy my story? What a journey it has been. I truly wonder, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have chosen silence to keep the peace, or would you have done what I did to reclaim your dignity? Let's meet in the comments below. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. I'm reading every single one. Which city are you listening from tonight? If my story resonated with you, you can support me and help me bring more stories like this to the world by sending a super thanks. Your sweet support means the world to me and allows me to continue this journey with all of you. On the screen now, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend you watch next. There are so many more on my channel, each with its own lessons and triumphs. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter. Thank you for being here with me. Until the next story, with love and respect.